to be able to implement those programs?
Since its establishment in 2019, the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare has been playing a very pivotal role in national development, being the principal technical advisor to government on all policy matters affecting the development and welfare of women, children, and other vulnerable groups, including the elderly and persons living with disability. In so doing, it sets the strategic direction and continues to effectively coordinate the government-wide gender mainstreaming effort to ensure that the perspectives of both gender are central to policy formulation, legislation, resource allocation, and program implementation with focus on gender equality, the empowerment of women, protection and development of children, and social protection of all vulnerable groups.
The Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare is opportune to be funded with both multilateral and bilateral support, which include also the government of the Gambia. We look at strategic needs of women, children and persons with disability, develop programs that will address to the National Development Plan and also the Sustainable Development Goals, and of which stem from the different directorates.
The ministry has been implementing our policies through appropriate legislations and costed action plans, key among which is our 5-year strategic plan, which is also anchored on the recovery-focused National Development Plan, of which the ministry is captured under Pillar 6, that also focuses on 4 key outcomes. One is ensuring the political, social, and economic empowerment of all Gambian women. 2 is ensuring the protection and well-being of children. 3 is ensuring inclusiveness and care for persons with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. And 4 is the delivery of social protection services for poverty alleviation.
The Directorate of Gender Equality and Women Empowerment basically focus on gender equality and empowerment initiatives.
Speaking on the Women Empowerment Policy of 2010 to 2020, the overall goal of the policy is to mainstream gender in all national and sectoral policies, programs, plans, and budgets to achieve gender equity, equality, and women empowerment in the development process. With a view to implement the policy, the ministry had developed a number of measures leading to the formulation, enactment of a number of legislation, including the following. 1, the Women's Act 2010, the Sexual Offences Act 2013, Domestic Violence Act 2013, the Women Amendment Act 2015, which bans the practice of FGM, the FGM Plan, Children Amendment Act 2016, the Women Enterprise Fund Act 2020, FGM Policy and FGM Strategic Plan.
Technically, we are tasked to address the gender biases that undermine our social fabric on a daily basis in the Gambia. So based on our strategy plan 2021 to 2025, we have key program or strategies that we use as entry point contributing towards gender equality in the Gambia. The first being, of course, looking at gender responsive policies and practices. And the second being women and girls empowerment. And the third, of course, being how we respond to sexual and gender-based violence, as well as the legal awareness that surrounds sexual exploitation and abuse in the Gambia. So moving from the policies and practices that are gender responsive in advancing gender equality in the Gambia, we then have to ensure that as a directorate, we design and implement projects and programs that are like responsive to addressing the gender discriminatory practices in the country. So our key intervention area has to do with women's participation, as well as leadership, decision making at all levels, whether it's political, whether it's economic, and whether it's the public life. Because it's important really to look at the scope of the problem that we're dealing with. To tackle this issue, we really have to understand the scope of the problem. Because if you look at the National Assembly, for instance, we're looking at 8.6% of the seats being women. And if you look at the general labor force participation, we're looking at 56.3%. females as opposed to 65.6%. And if in these percentages you have only 31.4% having senior management and middle level positions. So I think if time permits me, it's important that we look into the project-specific interventions that we're taking in terms of women's leadership and political participation. But moving from women's empowerment and in terms of leadership and political participation, we also as a directorate have to try as much as possible to eliminate any form of violence, especially sexual and gender-based violence against women and girls. We have to now include men and boys because the scope has widened to men, especially young boys being victims or survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. So this addresses, of course, how we prevent, how we protect and respond to any form of violence, but also creating the enabling environment for the legal frameworks that are in place to ensure that sexual and gender-based violence, as well as its services, comprehensive services, are being offered to citizens in the Gambia. The establishment of the Directorate of Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment as alone was enough to advance or contribute to advancing gender equality in the Gambia, because it brought light to the economic, the cultural, the social, as well as the political achievements of women in the Gambia, but also the challenges that they face and how we go about addressing those challenges through rigorous implementation of projects and programs that are specifically designed to elevate young women and girls from the bustling city of Banjul all the way down to the hard-to-reach areas of Koina. So it's more of a nationwide and a comprehensive approach in achieving and also tackling any forms of gender inequalities in the Gambia. We have many interventions, and of course it has to be many, because if you look at the future of poverty in the Gambia, it wears a female face in the sense that women constitute the majority of the poor as well as the extremely poor in the Gambia, and exacerbated by the fact that they occupy a low socioeconomic status. Some of the initiatives that we have taken in terms of women's economic empowerment. Of course, I'll have to begin with the Women Enterprise Fund, which is a flagship program of the government of the Gambia, in which the objective is to strengthen the capacities of women and girls in micro and small scale enterprises. So the loan sort of provides access to women and girls with low interest credit, in the sense that it's more of a group guarantee model of microcredit. And the beauty of this program is the fact that it's nationwide, and we also have regional gender officers stationed in each region to support and address the concerns that women have regarding the fund, and also ensuring that they turn this passion that they have for entrepreneurship into profits, which is truly very gratifying. We also have Kabilo Bama. It's a community-based intervention, and it combines women economic empowerment, sexual reproductive health, as well as male involvement in reproductive health issues of women. So with the Kabilo Bama, after its implementation and its pilot in Kiang East and Central, we had about, we're looking at 256 deliveries were recorded in the health facilities in that area, which of course is leading to an increased facility-based deliveries, something that we can really brag about, because in 2017, after this assessment was done, we realized that health facility deliveries had increased from 38% to 61.6% in 2017, which of course we can associate with improved pregnancy outcomes in those targeted communities. In 2024, the Kabilo Bama is currently being supported by the World Bank Sub-Saharan African Demographic Dividend Project, the SWOT Plus. Additionally, we also have a part production center in Basse, which is in Upper River region, supported by the UNFPA, where young girls are being trained on manufacturing reusable sanitary pads. So it's important to mention that under the SWEAT project, we have the expansion of economic opportunities for young girls and women. And in this case, we're looking at a new initiative that is targeting adolescent young women and girls aged 15 to 24 years, both in and out of school. So what we intend to do is to build their socioeconomic capacity, in the sense that we will be providing small cash grants as a startup capital for their enterprise development. Now, all these directly tied to the flagship programs that the Directorate of Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment are using and are aiming to promote women's leadership as well as economic empowerment. But we also cannot forget women in decision making, which is very close to our hearts, in the sense that we collaborate with our partners, namely the United Nations Development Program, which both, in a nutshell, encourage women in decision making and to encourage them to take up decision making positions, especially when it comes also in elections, because we encourage them as much as possible through community sensitizations and engagements that they register as voters. So we engage in numerous advocacy meetings, especially even with the National Assembly, for more women participation and leadership in decision making. And if you look at the 2021 presidential elections, you would notice that there was a huge improvement in terms of voter registration when it comes to how women came out to register as voters. They made up about 57% of the voter registration list nationwide. In KMC alone, we had about 56.3% women voters, and in Basse, we even had higher. It was at 61.9%. So that's something that we really take pride in the sense that we are having community engagement and sensitization that are very impactful in terms of women in leadership and women's political participation. The Gambia has a high gender-based violence prevalence rate. In the status quo, we're looking at 1 in 3 women aged 15 to 49 years becoming a victim of sexual and gender-based violence. And when you have sexual and gender-based violence ingrained with gender inequalities, if you leave this unchallenged, you'll notice that societies do not progress, and their development and demographic resilience is also automatically affected. So for gender-based violence, we merge our efforts with the private sector, namely the civil society organizations. For instance, we work closely with the Network Against Gender-Based Violence and Paradise Foundation, etc. Through the World Bank Sweat Plus project, we recently developed and validated the first ever gender-based violence policy, strategy, and costed action plan to guide and support our strategies. And this policy was really timely in the sense that it came in the year that the Gambia government also has created a gender-based violence victim support fund. Currently, we have an allocation of 2.3 million to support victims of gender-based violence coming directly from the government of the Gambia, which we highly appreciate, and we look forward to implementing this policy to its full effect, and also making sure that it's in line with whatever that we have in the pipeline. We also have the Orange Center as well as the temporary GBV shelter in Bakote, and also we have the one-stop centers nationwide, which are positioned in major government hospitals across the country. So what we intend to do with the one-stop centers is to have a comprehensive response package that provides survivors with health, legal, as well as psychosocial support services. We also have the call center, 199, which is merged for child protection and gender-based violence response. And this ties directly into our gender management information system for rapid response, as I said earlier, as well as data collection on GBV cases in the Gambia. Again, in the pipeline for gender-based violence, we have the establishment of gender-based violence courts. And this basically, like I said earlier, will be addressing our challenge in terms of ensuring that the GBV legislation is in line and is being implemented or enforced in the courts. It's important that I highlight the strategies as well as the policies that we have in place in tackling sexual and gender-based violence. But I don't think I'll do justice to this interview if I don't highlight the series of community engagements that my staff throughout the country are engaged in terms of penetrating mindsets and addressing cases of sexual and gender-based violence as they come up throughout the country. I think it's important on this note to appeal to the general public that if you know someone who is suffering from any form of violence, whether it's sexual or gender-based violence in any context, it's important that you support them, but it's also important that you refer them to the resources that we have at the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, and ensuring that they access these resources. And we also ensure that when it comes to sexual and gender-based violence or any form of violence, always speak out. Always, always, always speak out.
And the Directorate of Children Affairs looks at issues that relates to child protection and children on the move.
Since its establishment, the Directorate have been implementing child protection programs and activities across the country. We are interested in the protection and the safeguarding of the rights of children in this country. And we conduct stakeholder capacity building. For example, the law enforcement officers. We do training for the MDFDs. We also facilitate the development of legal framework like the Children's Act, and there are policies like the minimum standard, which was revised in 2021. We also facilitated the revise of the National Child Protection Strategy and Action Plan, which is under review right now. And another plan to develop the children's policy is on the way, which will start very soon. And we also had development of the situational analysis, of course, to gauge the situation of children, their vulnerability level in this country, which was done in 2021 and is completed, which will be used, for program and evidence-based policies and programming in this country. And of course, was spearheaded by the Directorate of Children's Affairs. Of course, making reference to the Convention of the Rights of the Child, that is the CRC, and the Children's Act. They are all instruments that we use. But nationally, the Children's Act is the legal instrument that we use to deal with cases of child protection against abuse and exploitation in this country. We worked with different stakeholders, like the police, there is the child welfare officers, we have the immigration, we work with Native in terms of trafficking cases, and DOL, that is Department of Labor. These are all key stakeholders that we work with, and of course with the community structures, and they are being trained by us in terms of case management, referral mechanisms, and other host of issues surrounding children in this country. We work with community structures. We have what we call the Child Protection Committees, CCPCs. These are the structures where we mainly work with. Although we have our regional staff, we also do conduct community outreach in the form of advocacy on child protection issues, especially with regards to child marriage, FGM, child labor, and a host of other child protection issues that are prevalent in this country. We have a committee that comprises of different stakeholders across the country dealing with children, who meet on a quarterly basis to report on their intervention on child protection. The Ministry of Justice, the Health, MEPSI, NATIP, Drug Law Enforcement, they are all part of these committees. Another key initiative that we have in place is also with regards to the residential care institution. We have a lot of residential care institutions in this country, and we have conducted a profile to make sure that we have the information of all these institutions. Then from there, we'll use the policies that I mentioned earlier to monitor this care institution in this country. It includes the orphanages in this country, it includes the madrasas, the Quranic boarding schools, and a host of other facilities that are hosting children across the country. The profiling was done. We are validating it very soon, so that we use this as a tool to be conducting regular monitoring to see whether these facilities or residential care facilities are adhering to the minimum standard that they should meet to operate such kind of facilities to ensure their safety and protection. One of the key issues in addressing child protection in this country is the issue of underreporting. We are aware there are a lot of cases happening, but it is always almost, not reported. Or even if it is reported, at the end of the day, the chances of that case being prosecuted is very minimal. When a rape case happens, normally it's difficult to have evidence. Before cases are reported, evidence are being tampered with, and find it's very difficult to proceed with the case. And even witnesses don't want to come out and testify. As a directorate, we are also service providers. We facilitate for the legal custody and foster care. We also provide clearances for minors traveling out of the country. And we also mediate cases on child maintenance-related cases, such as child support, access and custody dispute between parents, and host of other issues that the society is facing are also brought forward here. We mediate cases. We also have our shelter for children in Bakote, where we shelter vulnerable children, such as abandoned babies, missing children, the children on the move, these trafficked children. We provide them shelter, trace families, and reunite their families. We provide psychosocial support and counseling to these children while they are at our shelter. And we try to reunite them with their families. Those abandoned babies, we shelter them. We try to find families for them if their parents are not found. The government of the Gambia have been doing a lot of efforts in ensuring that children are protected in this country. They have put in place laws and policies which are geared towards the protection of children in this country. And of course, with the support of our key partners supporting us in ensuring that children are protected in this country. We need the commitment of the general public, because child protection is not something that you can do alone. You need the participation and involvement of every stakeholder. If you are not directly affected, you are indirectly affected. If you are not a stakeholder or an officer in child protection, you are a parent or a guardian. And of course, you need to take part in the protection of children from every angle.
The Directorate of Planning also focus on statutory reporting.
The impact of the national policies and programs on women, children, and other vulnerable groups are periodically monitored and reported, and appropriate measures are taken in mobilizing resources and integrating the vulnerable women as equal partners to men in the economic, social, political, and cultural development of the country.
The Directorate of Policy Development and Strategic Planning contributes to the strategic planning and policy development process of the ministry through the conduct of periodic reviews, research, surveys, functional reviews, and also it's responsible for facilitating the annual reviews of budget analysis of the ministry to take stock of how far the ministry is in terms of implementing its budgets aligned to the programs, and also prepare the annual progress reports. This includes quarterly progress report and also end of year progress report and impact reports in terms of the programs or projects that the ministry is implementing for the year under review. The Directorate also helps the ministry to contribute to the national development blueprints, such as the Recovery Focus National Development Plan 2022 to 2027, that is the NDP, by making sure that the ministry's programs and activities are aligned to the specific pillars of the NDP. For example, as a ministry, we are more focused on Pillar 6 of the National Development Plan, which focuses on women empowerment, social inclusion, leaving no one behind, and its corresponding outcomes. That is outcome 6.1, which focuses more on empowering women economically, socially, and politically. Then we also have outcome 6.2, which is more focused on children, making sure that they are nurtured and their rights are also protected. Then we have outcome 6.4, that focuses more on inclusiveness, making sure that people living with disabilities and older persons issues are also factored in development. And then last is the outcome 6.5, which is more on social protection. So these are all ways that the ministry contributes through the Directorate to making sure that the projects, programs, and activities of the National Development Plan is aligned with sector policies and programs. In fulfilling reporting obligations on the implementation of international conventions and treaties, the Directorate of Policy Development and Strategic Planning work closely with the Interministerial Working Group on Treaty Body reporting. So to date, the ministry has been able to fulfill its reporting obligation of the conventions and treaties like the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action. In June 2019, the country submitted its periodic report for Beijing Plus 25, and just last month, we submitted our report for Beijing Plus 30. Since in 2025, the protocol will have 30 years since it was passed in Beijing. So we've submitted our Beijing Plus 30 report in June of this year. We've also submitted periodic reports. Convention on the Right of the Child, the CRC report, was submitted earlier this year, 2024. The ministry has also contributed in submitting the UPR, that is the Universal Periodic Review, for the country. The African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. We are currently working on this report and will be submitted by end of October 2024. And then we also have the Convention on the Rights of the Elderly and the Convention on the Rights of the Persons Living with Disabilities. These protocols were recently signed and ratified by the country in 2024. So we look forward to submitting our reports in the near future. Partnership is a key enabler of sustainable development, and then we leverage this potential to make sure that in any activity or programs that the ministry is conducting, we collaborate with partners that are strategic to the specific project or program that we are implementing. The ministry over the years have worked with a lot of partners that helps in planning process, monitoring and evaluation, in research, and also when we're doing treaty reporting. For example, when the ministry is writing reports for submission to international treaty bodies, we organize or set up committees, intersectoral committees, where you have members from different ministries, different international organizations like UNICEF, UNFPA, Child Fund, because these are all stakeholders that work with the ministry to make sure that whatever report or product that we are producing, that ownership will be there, and also to make sure that it reflects the technical expertise from these technocrats from these very specific fields. So we also have different community level structures that the ministry also works with when they're doing evaluations or monitoring of programs, because at the end of the day, they are the receivers of these projects or beneficiaries of programs and projects. So when the directorate is conducting any form of assessment, we make sure that the involvement of the community is key in those processes. Of course, when it comes to technical areas like monitoring and evaluation, we currently have some systems that we got through partnership from UNICEF, UNFPA, like the Gender Management and Information System, which help us to collect data on incidences of sexual and gender-based violence in the country. And this is possible through our partnership with these UN agencies. Basically, these are the strategies that the directorate employs when working with our partners to make sure that we are able to realize the objectives of our program. Currently, the ministry is implementing a lot of programs and projects to improve and strengthen gender equality, child protection, and social welfare in the Gambia. Going forward, we also intend to pursue the following policy actions and programs in the near future: establish a project coordinating unit for a more coordinated efforts of program implementation. The ministry is also will continue to oversee the implementation of the gender policy 2025 to 2034, and also the Disability Act 2023. Since this the act has been passed, the policy is also going to be launched soon. The ministry will continue to oversee its implementation. It will also carry out popularization activities to make sure that these instruments are known to the communities, to ensure there is that ownership from all sectors. The ministry also have realized that there are a lot of delay in terms of litigation process, and this normally discourages people from reporting gender-based violence cases. So it also intends to work with relevant stakeholders to establish a specialized court for gender-based violence. It's also going to revise the child protection strategy to make sure that issues of children are well protected, and also their prevention mechanism to make sure that their rights are protected. The Women Reservation Bill is another activity that the ministry intends to pursue. It's currently working towards galvanizing more support for the passage of this bill. When this reservation bill is passed, it will pave the way for the creation of quota system, at least 14 seats for women in the parliament to improve the status of women in decision-making bodies in this country. It also intends to extend the number of beneficiaries of the current portfolio of the Women Enterprise Fund from 63,000 to 100,000 by the end of 2025. The Gambia government continues to support the ministry in ensuring the welfare of Gambian women, children, and people living with disability, and older persons are protected through government commitment in providing the necessary resources, from the financial resources, the human resources, and also the technical support that the ministry gets from development partners through the government to make sure that issues of women and children continues to take a center stage in our development agendas. I would like to say the issues of gender, children, people living with disabilities, and older persons, it's everybody's responsibility, because all these are people that the ministry works to serve, but they are living in communities. So it's a shared responsibility between the government, the families, and also the development partners to make sure that we coordinate our efforts in implementing programs or projects that will cater for the needs of these marginalized or vulnerable cohort of individuals in our communities. We look forward to more partnership, more collaboration, more communication between the ministry and also all these relevant stakeholders. Our doors are always open for the communities and the development partners to reach out.
And the Directorate of Social Welfare looks at family strengthening programs and also welfare services to persons with disability and the vulnerable population.
Speaking on the social protection policy, whilst the Social Protection Secretariat provides oversight function on the implementation of the policy, the Directorate of Social Welfare remains the implementing arm of the policy. We do work together with the Social Protection Secretariat in the implementation of welfare programs, one of which is the Family Strengthening Program. Even the data derived from the Family Strengthening Program is generated by the Social Protection Secretariat. We are proud to announce that so far 2,011 beneficiaries have received cash transfers amounting to $8 million. The Social Protection Policy is also implemented through the Persons with Disabilities Act. We have established an advisory council for persons with disabilities, rehabilitation of persons with disabilities through the establishment of an orthopedic building also in Banjul. There also exists a National Disability Fund for the operation of the Council's activities of the Disability Federation and Persons with Disabilities organizations.
The Directorate of Social Welfare is responsible when it comes to provide welfare services to the most vulnerable groups in the country, which of course include women, children, persons with disabilities, prison inmates, destitute, and the list goes on. Looking at our interventions, we've been providing social protection services in the country. Apart from that, we've also been supporting vulnerable individuals through our different interventions, so that their vulnerability can be reduced and they build resilience. Currently, the Directorate of Social Welfare under the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare is implementing a family strengthening program which is supporting the most vulnerable in society. So we have 4 different categories we are supporting. That's the old age, 70 years and above, the persons with disabilities. We look in that too, we are looking at those with multiple disabilities. Because if you want to say disability, it will, we have a lot of disability, but with multiple, in order to reduce the numbers. Yeah, we also have female-aided household that we are supporting, and orphans and vulnerable children we are also supporting. So each of these 4 categories, we supporting about 500 each by monthly cash transfer, so that they can be able to support themselves, make sure that their kids are sent to school, and also go on monthly visit at the health facilities, and also the nutritional status of the communities or the families are also improved. So it definitely impacted on their families and also on the livelihood of the beneficiaries. In some instances, because by the old age, they also identify carers who will take care of them. Because looking at the age, you need to have someone within the household who will take care of these elderly people. This program, that's the family strengthening, is purely Gambia government initiative. Looking at the Directorate of Social Welfare, because our main mandate is part of providing services to the vulnerable groups. The Conventions on Persons with Disability, which was ratified in June 2024 by the National Assembly, and also the Convention on Older Persons was also ratified in June 2024. This is to show government commitment to support and protect the vulnerable group of this country.
So these are the thematic areas that we develop programs on. And I could give you a list of programs that we have currently. The UNCDF is a program which focuses more on financial literacy of women. And we have the UNFPA program that is more on gender mainstreaming and empowerment of women. And the UNDP program focuses more on governance issues, women, political rights, and participation. So these are the areas, and of which government also provided funds for us to establish a program called the Women Enterprise Fund. So basically, these are structures that are under us and also implementing some of those programs. When you look at the way we do our planning, is we look at findings of research. When you look at the DHS, it shows some kind of improvement that is required in the area of disability and also vulnerable population. So the ministry actually review current situation in terms of looking at our statistics. The DHS Demographic Health Survey, and also the current census, and also other international instruments and reports that we produce will tell you basically where the vulnerability lies. And we respond to vulnerability and inequality. And in that context, programs are developed. And if we develop those programs, it helps us to now focus more on specific needs to address those situations. The analysis is always done to reflect on our thinking that when you want to address a situation, as we did during the Recovery Focus National Development Plan, other issues emerge. And of course, we identify some of those issues to be able to intervene in. And one of the programs that emerged from the Family Strengthening Program came into being, of which government earmarked $30 million for the implementation of the Family Strengthening Program. When you look at the current program that we have, that is the Family Strengthening Program, as I stated, and also other series of programs that we had, the Women Enterprise Fund, that has impacted economically in the welfare and well-being of Gambian women. When you go in the rural areas now, you will see they are investing in more of the productive sector, of which we've supported gardens, we've supported production of, all kind of investment, poultry, sheep fattening for women to be able to earn income. And of course, this income has been put into good use when we reflect on what the use of that income during our monitoring program. You realize that most of them has used that money to pay school fees and also determine all other issues that relate to their health expenditure. Basically, when you look at the Gambian economy, almost 80% of our economy has been implemented through small-scale businesses, and of which women form the majority of those small-scale businesses. And that created the establishment of the Women Enterprise Fund, and also other investment that we are doing in terms of cash transfer. And this has contributed immensely into the economic earnings of women. We've made a study that shows us in terms of access to finance now, Gambia has reached at least the threshold of which we provided opportunities for Gambian women and girls to access to finance through the Women Enterprise Fund. And of course, the cash transfer that we do under the Family Strengthening Program also created those small-scale businesses, and of which has contributed immensely into the welfare and well-being of Gambian women, and most importantly, those in the rural community. Any program implementation or conceptualizing a program, you must have to think of the monitoring and evaluation, which is critical in terms of, identifying the impact. You'll be able to easily identify the impact if you have a system in place. What we have, we call it Gender Management Information System. Of course, it helps us to identify the key deliverables of the project. Progressively, we monitor our programs, and this helps us management to take informed decisions on where to adjust and where to take considerable attention, and which is very important as development practitioners. We don't just only, tailor-made programs and also leave them to evolve, but of course, you have to test them, pre-test them, and also know whether you are making impact or not. But the Gender Management Information System is here to stay. Critically, we have structures that help us to identify programs because we focus on, bottom-up approach to development. The bottom-up approach is we have national women councillors across the 58 districts of this country. And of course, we have the Tundol Binkos, we have the Bajan Gox. So it's a women's network that is very important. And of course, we also have this civil society organization and NGOs that works with us directly on issues that relate to children and also issues that relate to women empowerment. So most of our programs are bottom-up approach. They identify the need, we diagnose and also intervene. So partnership is very important in this endeavor. So through the support of the civil society and all our grassroots structures, we're able to implement and sustain programs that have critically empowered rural communities. In terms of community participation, we ensure that communities see projects as their own. A critical example is when we provided milling and threshing machines to rural communities, and we identify women to operate those machines, train them. So we tell them, this is your program, this is your project. You identify the need, you have to sustain it, you have to make it as your ownership. Because ownership here is very important. Let them not see anything that is coming to them as this is government. I will just play with it. Later I'll say it's okay, and then they will come and maintenance it. No, we make sure that we put all structures, the management structures, and also and the accounting system, the record system, so that they can take ownership of those programs to be able to sustain it. And of course, we also take this opportunity to highlight the fact that we are also having intervention with bilateral agencies, particularly the ECOWAS Commission through the ECOWAS Gender Development Center in Dakar, of which we have also programs that relates to fistula, obstetric fistula. We are investing almost $245,000 in the implementation of the fistula program. This is a partnership between Ministry of Health, Ministry of Trade, and the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare to look at the plight of women who are affected with obstetric fistula. So, and also, the support program for the protection of children victims of violation, we call it PAPEF. We also thank the Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees and also the UN agencies that supported that program to implement issues that related to supporting majlis and cross-border issues, children on the move, and of which we have gained some dividend in terms of those programs. On behalf of the Minister, I would like to take this opportunity to also reaffirm our commitment in terms of sustaining the gains that we have made since 2019, and of course, reaffirm our commitment into sustaining the mission in terms of where the strategic vision of which we want to reach by 2030, because we are accelerating our effort in terms of getting to meeting the sustainable development goals and also the recovery focus national development plan.
From our ministry, we believe that with concerted efforts, we can strive to create an inclusive and equitable society that upholds the dignity and well-being of all Gambian citizens, irrespective of race, gender, ethnicity, physical ability, religion, and social status.
This is brought to you by the Ministry of Information as part of its public consultation and popularization of the government agenda initiatives.